This will be the only talk where the presenter will ask you to please use your phone. So please take out your phones or unlock them and choose 5 words that you think I will use within this presentation. It doesn't have to be those words on the list, any 5 words you think, but in the context of what we're going to be talking about. I.e., please don't use the word the, so I'm guaranteed to say that. Whoever gets to the first 5 words, first will get an awesome prize. Well, I think it's an awesome prize. I have no idea if it is or not. I'll give you a minute more. No, just write them on your phone or put them into your phone. Sorry, that's what the phone is for. When you get the 5 words, shout bingo, do a little dance, and you'll get a prize. If you don't do the dance, you don't get the prize. You guys are laughing. No, it's really. You could. Okay, let's move along. So the first thing I want to talk about is what does it mean when we talk about the ultimate agile team member? And I'm sure everyone here has heard this terminology somewhere. We're looking for the perfect agile team member. And then we start thinking about what makes a perfect agile team member. Yeah? So the first couple of them are pretty self-evident. We've seen them for years and years and years. Everyone knows them. Self-direction, self-management, accountability, team before self. So it's a team before the individuals itself. And then obviously multi-skilled. Everyone agree with those? I'd like to add 3 things to that list, if I may, which I think are pretty important for any of the future workforce. First one is we're looking for people that are optimists and realists. And the reason for this is we want to know upfront when the ask of the project team or the product management team is too great. We want realism in what we can achieve. We also want optimism in the knowledge that we can push ourselves slightly as well. The second one is the social contract. So I take it that everyone in the room has done a team working agreement. Yes? Has anyone in the room not done a team working agreement? Has anyone, so of the people that have done a team working agreement, has anyone witnessed a team member that doesn't obey the teaming agreement? Anyone? Yeah? So that's what we call violating a social contract. We actually want people that when they create the social contract, they actually stick by it. Because that's the fundamental rules of the team. And the third one is sharing work product. We often come across teams where the consensus on the Scrum board or the Kanban board is a red sticky that says, waiting for someone to give me something. I'm assuming everyone's seen that. And that piece of the puzzle is actually we are waiting for someone to share their work product with us. That is an anti-pattern within a Scrum team because work products actually belong to the organization. It's not a person's work product. All right. So I have the pleasure, and I say pleasure, or the honor of working with new software engineers, analysts, QA members, product management groups. And one of the questions that I always ask, or take the opportunity to ask them is, what do you want to gain from working in this team? And there's 4 of the biggest responses are there, which I think they're fairly well understood. Yeah? The big parts of it is that most of our future workforce, they want to know why they should do the work. They are less interested in being told how to do the work. This is counter to some of our management techniques that say juniors have to come in and we've got to teach them how to do work in the right way. What the millennials are telling us is that don't tell me how to do the work, tell me why you want me to do the work. There is one that's not on that list. It used to be on the list and I took it off. And it went as follows. I've heard about this thing called Agile. How do I install it on my phone? Has anyone seen that one before? Anyone heard of that one before? Or can you install Agile on my laptop? I know it sounds like a really bad joke, but I've heard this way too many times for it to be a once-off, actually. I am doing an app about Agile. Anybody that's interested, it'll be on the App Store soon. That is a joke. I'm not building an app. Let's get emails tomorrow from people wanting the app download link. So, Has anyone seen this poster before? It's a very interesting poster. So there's a story behind this poster, actually. This poster, the furthest reference I can find is Dr. Shanta Wood, who is from the United States, and she did a thesis on this as far as I know. Now, I'm not sure whether she actually invented it or not. The story behind this was, this showed up on my Twitter feed about 3 months ago. And the story behind this was, another coach in the industry noticed this poster on an engineer's wall the day he resigned, packed up, and left, which I thought was very interesting. The poster was there all this time. No one had seen it because the engineer was obviously had been blocked. Yeah? I then looked at the poster and said, well, what if we use this as a checklist, as a personal checklist? And the personal checklist around, does my current organization check all these boxes that makes me be an employee that wants to stay? I'm glad to say that my organization does check, I think, all of those boxes. I probably, that first one up there, paid well. I don't see my boss in the room. Yeah, so if anybody knows my boss, tell him to pay me more, because more is always better, surely. Yes? So the idea is that we always use this as part of our coaching engagements and any of our team engagements, and any of our personal engagements. Say, well, if I had to check box, a rating of 1 to 3, where 3 being highly, I'm happy with that rating, and 1 being, this never happens in my place of work. If you ask people to start doing this here, you'll get a very interesting view of what the organization looks like. Based on this, and based on all these conversations I've had with the younger workforce, and I use the word younger because I am getting on the older side of things, so I count myself on the older group of people, there's 4 that sort of pop out for me. And these are the 4 that I want to talk through in a bit more detail today. The first one's creating purpose, then creating safety, creating rewards, and then creating talent growth. First up, creating purpose. The questions that I asked myself when exploring this topic was, is asking a team to work off a product backlog creating purpose for that team? And at first I thought the answer was yes, because as we get to the end of the backlog, we've obviously accomplished what somebody else's idea was. And that's where the penny dropped. Every backlog is actually someone else's idea. So while we do need backlogs in order to structure work, that can't be the starting point of creating purpose. There has to be more to it. In order to answer the question of what does more and creating purpose look like, I had to answer the question of what is the future state of work. And after much thought and lots of Twitter reading and lots of Googling and lots of YouTube watching, notably Justin Bieber singing along with cats, I came up with the answer that the future of work is complex problem solving with drastic business consequences. And this resonated with me because we currently live in the age where, there's 2 different mics picking up. We currently live in the age where anything longer than a month is actually too long. Anything longer than a sprint is taken as a failure. Anything longer than a day for feedback is absolutely unnecessary and almost beyond the scope of our younger generation's reasoning. Us of an older generation are quite used to waiting 2 weeks to get a meeting. Agreed? Try asking a millennial to book something for 2 weeks in the future. It's almost like you've asked them a question that they've never heard before in their life. The sheer look of despondent hits them, because in their mind, in 2 weeks' time, there will be there'll be a new song from Kanye West. They'll probably have a new boyfriend/girlfriend. So 2 weeks is way too long in their mind. So we've got to find a way to actually cater for this need. A little bit of a case example, not a very long one. So it was a large financial institution where I did some work at. There was a project that commenced about 8 plus months ago. The reason why it's 8 plus is nobody can tell me when it actually started, except they can tell me that it started. That was it. The team was anyone that was available. So, if you came off another project or the work on your project came to a stop or there was a delay, you were available. Everyone, does this ring a bell? It's a whole capacity management, resource utilization, keep people busy kind of syndrome. If you're on the bench, better do something. Let's do this thing. Product owners were my favorite aspect of this project. In the 8 months that I had known them, they had changed product owners more than 9 times. Just put that in context. That's more than 1 a month. More than 1 a month. What does every group product owner do when he comes in? Tells you that the other product owner didn't know what they were doing, but they are there to save the day. And if you ask the team what they think about that, they'll tell you, well, we've heard this story 6 times so far. So nothing's actually going to change. The net result, 75% of the team left or churned. They either left the organization, they left the business area, they moved to other business areas. Some of them actually left the competencies. So there was one in particular, this person was a BA. The person actually took the free time to learn how to become a software engineer. I didn't say a good software engineer. They just learned how to write code. So they were a junior software engineer. They changed competencies. Millions were wasted, and there's a team that's not just demotivated. There's a team that's given up, basically. So how do we fix this? If anyone has an idea how to fix it, please let me know. I think that answer's worth a couple of millions to that organization at the moment. So, some practices for creating purpose. These things are on the test at the end of the talk. You have been told there's a test, right? There's a 60-minute exam, guys. This is on the exam. You've got to make notes of this. So I'm not going to talk to all of them. I'm going to talk to point number 2 and point number 4. So point number 2, this is one of the soapboxes that I'm currently standing on, and where it says we should not be creating backlogs of requirements. We should be creating backlogs of problems to be solved. And there's a very slight difference between those two things. The difference is that when we talk about a backlog of requirements, we are basically translating what someone else thought the problem was and its solution. When we talk about a backlog of problems, we are talking about the problems that this person has seen, and if you are a client-centric organization, you are talking about problems that your clients have told you about. That ties directly into number 4, where we need to be bringing our teams into spaces and into areas where the teams have the necessary competence and skills to fix those problems. We cannot take problems and give them unilaterally to teams. We have to be thinking about teams and what their ability is to solve the problem. That is where a big part of the accountability comes about. One of the slides, I'll talk a bit more about that. So, next one, creating safety. I'm assuming everyone in the room has heard the very old agile cliche saying of fail fast. Yes? How many of you guys have said fail fast to an executive? And then you watch them almost shudder because you dropped the F-bomb, right? You said the word fail. That's not possible. How can you fail? Failure is bad. The problem with not failing, or let me not say not failing, the problem with creating safety is that in order to create safety, there is an element of struggle. Every person in every organization, us included, from our junior days, in whatever competency you started off in, even before that when you were at school, even before that when you learned to ride your first bicycle, or when you learned anything. The early days of doing that were really bad, unless your name is Sheldon Cooper, in which case, good luck. Unless you're that person there, everyone else, we go through lots of struggles on a daily basis. But we're able to use those struggles in order to learn. Very often, though, our teams are given problems and zero room to actually fail and learn. And if they do fail, they are told, you failed once, you cannot fail again. Or, if you failed, don't tell anyone about it. That definitely doesn't sound like a safety culture. it sounds like a culture where there is zero fire cover. So we have this terminology called fire cover, where each layer in the project team covers for the person above them. So the Scrum Master is providing fire cover for his team, product owners providing fire cover for the Scrum Master. Somebody above the product owner at best be providing fire cover for them as well. Because if we don't, then we end up with this condensed version of reality that says the original project needed to be delivered in 6 months. You failed for 3. The deadline doesn't move. So now you have 3 months. Then you fail again and you now have 2 months. That's exactly the opposite of what Agile tells us to do actually in this case. Second example, I'm particularly fond of this title, Don't Squeeze the Oreo, and you'll find out who the Oreo is in this case. It's also a large financial institution. Compliance project, multi-million rand, and I dare to say it might be close to $1 billion now actually. It might actually end up close to $1 billion. 50, 60, maybe even 70% of the team's work was actually done by an external organization. Everybody see where this is going. I get blamed for somebody else's lack of delivery. Sounds like a very safe culture to work in. Traditional project management, still largely at play, and this is no swipe at project managers. This is just that if we are going to be doing project management, we should have the guts to say we are doing project management, as opposed to doing project management and then calling it agile, which results in this pseudo-agile kind of weird area where we are translating backlogs of requirements or backlogs of user stories into scope documents. And then we get them signed off. I see some people nodding. I assume that you have seen this happening. And when you saw this happening, in your brain went, this doesn't look right. I'm here to tell you it isn't right. So the culture of blame. So blame doesn't start at the bottom levels, right? It starts at the top levels. Because everyone has a boss. Unfortunately, the boss at the very top and the boss at the very bottom are separated by many layers of variance. And each layer of variance takes that reporting mechanism and adds more complexity to it. So the message of we will be late at the bottom layer translates to we will never be able to deliver this project ever at the top layer, which then results in the pressure. So we have to be very careful about that. The result, 10% was achieved, less than 10%. Team, 0 room for learning, no growth in the team at all. 60% of the team are actively looking for new employees, so if anyone's looking for engineers, let me know. I will forward on their details. Right, so practices for creating safety. Again, 4, I want to talk about number 1, and I want to talk about number 4. Number 2 and number 4. So I use the word telemetry. So it's very close to metrics, but the reason that I use the word telemetry is that I want the metrics and the data in real time. So I want to know in real time what the state of work is in terms of all through the funnel of work. From the time that we're unpacking a problem to the time that we're doing design work and development and deployments, I want to know throughout that pipeline in real time, how fast are we going? What's going through? What's the defect rates? I also want to know how often are we failing? So very often when we talk about the failure aspect, very rarely have I seen metrics or telemetry where the teams actually report on the number of failed experiments that they actually do. Because obviously it's bad culture. I actually want to see a team where the number of failed experiments is actually constant. We're constantly experimenting, we're constantly trying to learn about things. That's tied to the last one, where the opportunities to grow and to learn and become better engineers, better Scrum Masters, better product owners, better product management group people, better executives. We, as the leadership teams of these organizations, have to be in a place where we create the opportunities for these learning things to happen. They don't happen by mistake. We actually have to put these things into backlogs of problems to be solved. That is the only way these teams can actually learn this way. Third one. No one's hit bingo as yet. That's weird. Have you guys forgotten about bingo? Third one, create purpose-driven rewards. So, The carrot and the stick. Everyone knows the carrot and the stick. If you go faster, at the end of the race, the relay race, I'll give you a reward. Yes? Problem is this. This we know from science and from scientific research only works when we're dealing with non-cognitive work. For cognitive work or for knowledge workers, that approach doesn't work. We know that. Secondly, it makes one very drastic assumption. It assumes that the benefits of the carrot outweigh the disbenefits of the stick. It's a lot of words, right? Let's put it into an example. If I told my kids, if you don't eat your veggies, there's no dessert. Sounds like a logical thing to say, yes? That should motivate them to eat the veggies, right? What if dessert is really horrid? There's zero motivation to eat my veggies now. But this is basically what we do to most teams. We go, listen, there is a carrot. I'm going to give you this voucher. There's a voucher. It's an awesome voucher. But I'll tell you what the voucher is for at the end. So we work really hard for 6 months. We get to the end and we beaten and bruised and we're bloody and we're ready for a break and we're dreaming of this voucher. That's a 6-day cruise to the Reunion Islands. And what you actually get is a voucher for a pedicure. Somewhere along the line, it's like, well, voucher was 300 Rand. I didn't have to work that hard, actually. Could have just bought the voucher. So we have to be very clear about this part. So I'm not picking anyone that goes for pedicures, eh? Get hate mail for that. So third example, paying it forward. Software development house, large contingents of analysts, very, very siloed-based business. Typical consulting house, I would say. Very siloed-based. Each group, or each competence, rather, as a better word, is measured and rewarded separately and individually as well. For argument's sake, and I didn't explore all of the ones because after I explored the engineer's reward mechanism, I gave up. Engineers are rewarded for the number of lines of code that they've written. And when I heard this, I thought the person was having a joke until I realized they were actually being serious. There was a person that was employed who on a daily basis logged into the repositories and checked according to, I think it was the Git repository, if I'm not wrong. They checked the amount of lines of code that a person, and then they tallied it up, and over a period of time, they went, well, you were the most efficient, hence you get a reward, etc., etc. The question that I asked them was, how much of this is working software, actually? And the answer was, well, all of it's working. Like, cool, so it's in production. No, we're not there as yet. We still have to do a bunch of testing. So apparently we're rewarding the wrong behavior. So very, very complex environment, very, very complex product line. It is not unusual for customers of this organization to wait more than 12 months for anything. It's the norm, basically. Very, very, very little product benefits and absolutely no way to tie back rewards to those products either. So how do we go about creating rewards that make sense, actually? So number 1 and number 4 are the two that I want to speak about specifically. When we think about reward structures, so if you think about football or any sport, the reason that people play that sport and we watch that sport is because the rules for the reward doesn't change. I'll repeat that. The rules for the reward don't change. Can you imagine watching a rugby game where halfway through they decided that we're no longer going to follow rugby rules, we're now going to follow the rules of badminton in order to score a try? Will that game it will be fantastically entertaining, but it won't make much sense to anyone not following the game. Agreed? It also wouldn't make sense if you don't know badminton, actually. But in most organizations, this is exactly what we do. We agree a set of measures at the very beginning, completely divorced from what we're actually going to ask the team to do in the next 6 to 12 months. And then at the very end, we figured out, well, have you hit that performance measurement? If you haven't, let's massage the data a little bit to get it to fit. Does that make sense? So, this presents a problem, though. The problem it presents is that each competence, and by some extrapolation, each team is going to need a separate set of these reward metrics. Because a team is going to work on a unique problem or set of problems, therefore those rewards and those metrics for those rewards would be unique to that team. This presents a nightmare for human resources thankfully, I don't work in human resources. So that sounds like their problem to deal with. Agreed? Agile people, we just give it to somebody else to deal with it. Talent growth. So this is the one that I got the most amount of Twitter hate about. And you'll come to see why I got Twitter hate about this. So I am a strong advocate for revolving door policies in organizations. What do I mean by a revolving door policy? A person should join the organization when they feel like it and when the organization values their contribution. And that person should leave the organization when the person no longer has any value to add to that organization. There should not be any loops in between that says, well, you signed this document that says we invested in your training, therefore, you can only leave when you turn 60. Does that make sense? This is against many, many, many management protocols that I understand, though. Systems of information. This is a very interesting topic for me. When we think of knowledge workers, we think of them by default as systems of information. And a system of information's purpose is to collect more information. That's what they do. That's what youngsters do. If anyone has kids, sort of really young kids like under 10, you'd notice how fast they learn stuff at that age. Now think back to when they were 5 or 4. The rate of learning that they had when they were 5 or 4 was exponentially larger than they were at the age of 10 or 11. Make sense? Imagine when that person is 25 and joins the organization. The rate or ability to learn new things has actually decreased. But we need to be able to allow them to gather this information so that they become better systems of information for the organization. The opposite side of this coin would be a system of record, where we have our key man dependencies. You become an expert. We send you on all the training. When you come back, you teach some other people, but you're still the expert. Eventually, we promote you to a level where you have a glass office, and then you are never allowed to leave the organization ever again. We never want to have systems of records in that nature. We actually want people, wrong one. We actually want people that join, learn, upskill, and when they've contributed the value that they can contribute, leave, go to another organization, wherever that might be, repeat the same process. And at some point in the future, they'll probably leave there and they might want to come back to your organization with new information that they've now brought in as well. I've got some people going, yeah, it sounds good. Also, good luck explaining that to recruitment. Yes. So, our people are our greatest asset. Has anyone seen this type of a poster at reception desks or wherever? Canteens generally? There's generally a plaque that says, our greatest asset is our people. Yes? And then you actually speak to the people in there, and everyone's looking for a new job. And you got to ask yourself, I don't understand. If you are treated so well, why you want to leave? Yeah, that's just a screensaver, right? So, largest independent consulting firm in Southern Africa, actively promotes upskilling of our people, of people, encourages movement of people across business units with as least friction as possible, maintains a very strong alumni network, which means if you used to work for this company on a yearly basis, you get an invite to come back. So obviously, if we liked you, you get to come back. If we didn't like you, we send you an invite with the wrong date. You still get invited. So it is IQ business. So we probably have, from all the management consulting firms, we have a very low attrition rate. Generally, it's thought of as a great place to work. It sounds like marketing spiel, but it's actually based on true evidence, because that's what we do. We practice Agile, and we practice all these things that I've been speaking about. We do this every day, and we see the results of it. So, what are the practices for creating this talent growth? So, the one that I want to talk, or the two that I want to talk in, is number 1 and number 3. Notice I don't talk about each point. Number 1, practical learning. All too often, we see organizations that pursue the certification path first. So send everybody on training, and then we agile, right? Or send anybody on safe training, and then we safe. Send in, and I'm not picking on safe, I am an SPC, so I'm not picking on safe. But the idea is that we are not trying to get expertise via certification. We are trying to get expertise via practical application of knowledge. And you don't need a certificate in order to apply the knowledge, because one of the wonderful things about the Agile community is that we share everything for free, most times, unless it's copyrighted and trademarked. Then you must pay for it. But we generally share for free. The third one is the graceful exit at entry points. There was a story way back when, and an exit interview was done with somebody, and the question was asked, why are you leaving? And the answer that was given was, I don't know what I'm doing here. Does that make sense? I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't have a purpose. I don't have a reason for being here, and this person left. The question that was asked after that was, why was this person allowed to be in the organization for so long without somebody actually speaking to them and going, what is it that you want to do? That is not a graceful exit. That person will probably never return to that organization, ever again. But yet within banking, especially within banking, do we have anyone from banking? You don't have to put your hands up. I just want to sort of get just a nod so you can do it like undercover. There we go. So especially in banking, we have this, we almost have revolving doors, right? I used to work for Bank A, and then I go to work for Bank B. And then I go to work for Bank C, and then before I know it, I'm back at Bank A again. If I move, my friends move as well. Some people see this as a bad thing. I see this as a good thing, actually. Because as we keep doing this process, and if it's graceful, and if it's easy and smooth, then the knowledge of what the other banks are doing, especially or not banks, the other competitors are doing, especially in terms of culture, in terms of the way they want to work, in terms of the atmosphere, will ultimately start spreading through all the organizations, which ultimately results in better organizations for all the people that work there. Where this falls apart, though, is when we start tying people down to NDAs, non-disclosures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are not graceful entries and exits. Right, almost at the end. Thank you, everyone, for not falling asleep. I do appreciate it. So, wrap up, create purpose and alignment, create safety, purpose-driven rewards, and talent growth. I do believe that as the leaders of the organization, or the future leaders of the organization, it's up to us to actually make these things happen. It sounds soft and fuzzy, but those concrete practices, while there's only 4 per an area, there's probably a lot more. Those are actually very difficult to actually get going and to actually sustain over the long period of time. Final thoughts before we get to the questions. Final thoughts. The things that we do today as leaders or as managers or as scrum masters or as product owners, while there is an immediate short-term effect in terms of the project delivery, the project output, the project whatever, we've got a bingo winger, we've got to do a song. Did I say song? I can't remember the rules either. I'm changing the rules of the game. I'll give you a prize this one. You stopped me in the middle of what I was saying. So the things that we do today, they have a short-term effect, but they also have a very long-term effect. So everyone that we engage with as teams will go on to engage with other people over the next 10, 15, 20 years. I think back to when I first joined the industry, and I think back to my first managers and mentors and coaches, and I'm grateful for some of the things that they put me through. Some of it was not pleasant at the time. I think any junior engineer will tell you that there's a expected level of servitude when you are a new developer. Yes? Same thing. But those things actually help us get better. We've got to make sure that the stuff that we do today is actually aligned to what we want to see in the industry 10, 15, 20 years' time. Else, when we attend Agile Africa 2036, I'll probably be standing up here and talking about the same thing. And then everyone here is going to go, but I thought you said this 20 years ago. I did. Questions? Sure. Excellent. That's such a good job, there's no questions. No, Dylan, you can't ask any questions. That's it, guys. Thanks so much.